Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to my power-packed panel. Okay, so today we're going to talk here about data intelligence. It's a big topic, so we're going to try and narrow it down, and we're going to focus on some key areas that the two of you are dealing with. We try and talk about data in relation to remote work, data when it comes to the employee experience, which you just spoke about, Shelley, and then perhaps what is a very big challenge, useless data. So Shelley, if I can start with you.
Yep.
You made a very interesting comment during our prep sessions. You said that without data, you can't drive change. You mentioned that you have some aspirations and some projects that you're working on internally. Would you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a feature that I think we've heard about this morning as we were going through, and I absolutely echo the sentiment of the guy who was up here before that said, you go to the board with your pack and you just say, well, it's my gut feeling that this is happening. I've been there, I'm still there, so I feel you very much. What the business and the organization, from my perspective, is hugely data-driven, and I think mobility has been siloed from that for a number of years. So I came into mobility, I don't have a mobility background, so again, the guy that said everybody lands themselves in mobility by accident, I chose this. I love a challenge. So employment lawyer background, so know the business very, very well, been an employment lawyer for 15 years, came into the global mobility industry, born out of a frustration of how siloed and how fragmented it was across BAE Systems. We have 95,000 employees across 40 plus countries, about 600 assignees. I can't tell you how many business travelers off the top of my head, hence why I'm here. But obtaining that data and enabling ourselves to use the data to drive insightful understanding to support proactive business decisions is absolutely at the core of what we're trying to achieve. One of the topics that we're kind of looking at in terms of transformation, I kind of say there are sort of 4 pillars of my transformation program that we're on at the moment. The first is around service delivery, and within that, using suppliers, using partnership with and collaborating with your suppliers and the technology that they have is critical to us being able to succeed. The other one is technology, and into that is absolutely the data piece. Getting and harnessing the vast amount of information that mobility has, not necessarily just for our own purpose, but for other teams and other functions, and we can almost sit in the center, enabling the data that we have flowing through us to provide and support other teams to help their journey as well. So we have technology as another one of our pillars. We have the underlying policy and the way that is set up and structured. And again, I really echo the sentiment of somebody earlier when they were saying about feeling empowered and making their own decisions. So we are looking to move towards that element of choice around a points-based system. And then finally, it's around how do we interact with our kind of colleagues in an international HR operating model perspective. So we have those 4 pillars, but critical to understanding how we can best serve the organization is data and accurate data, being able to rely upon what you are gathering in what is a fundamentally central role to the organization's future.
No, I think accurate data is something we chatted about in detail. And in fact, I think somebody today made a very interesting comment about you tell a story with data. I think that was Jacob, right, from Grammarly. So moving on, I wanted to... Joe, I think you wanted to chat a little bit more about your journey at your organization. You had mentioned that you have an in-house team that looks at data analysis, and of course you're data-centric, which is pretty obvious. But what we specifically chatted about was the hybrid work model and the challenges you had around that, and if you could tell us more about that.
Sure. Let me start with introducing the company. A lot of people think that Dassault Systems is aerospace. We are not. Some of you already know that. We are the R&D specific, we are software developers, we are a technology company. So you can imagine data, without it, we cannot survive. And our chief is even called CPIO, Chief People and Information Officer. She's engineer by nature, about 35 years of career. So from that perspective, data is abundant. So we, as a Dassault system, also own the database itself and the platform even. So when the presentation made earlier saying that a lot of people has no software or tools, we do have that. And even connecting with the hybrid or remote working, we do keep track of everyone where they are. Now, the question is, we actually talked about it for the discussion was, what kind of data are we collecting? Is it all useful? Was the key question. So I don't know how many of you actually know the book title, The Measure That Matters. That's published by the person named John Doerr, who is the Google person before. That book actually does say that you have to measure what it really matters. So that was a struggle that the Dassault system started having as an HR. So engineers, they already do that. But HR's mobility, we never did it. Or even if we did it, we also had a gut feeling all the time. We had the data, we didn't know what to use it. Is it useful? Not useful. So for example, early this afternoon, before I joined this call, I actually had a call with the team members about one of our programs, integration. It's an internship program. The question was raised. Number one, how many people are moving? Where are they moving to? How much of money they are spending? In which location they are spending? Those data are already available. So if you think about it, data itself is within the company's culture, and connecting the dots together to the hybrid, as we are asking the question of, during the pandemic, we already had information and data collected where people were. Now the question was, I think it's connected with the ChatGPT usage that we all know. How are we going to use that? And what are we going to do with it? So that's the main question that the leadership is asking every day today.
No, but that's lovely, connecting the dots. That's what we need to do with the data, extract the
Absolutely.
right kind of data to connect the dots. Shelley, do you have any similar headaches when it comes to remote work?
Well, very luckily in this respect, we have security restrictions, which means that actually we kind of can't take our assets outside of particular countries. So the large majority means we don't have that remote work challenge. I'm very grateful for you all to be sorting that out on our behalf so that when there is a relaxation, you guys have got all of that sorted. But one thing we have noticed is some of the security provisions that we put on the technology does lead to the occasional ping happening in a south of France or an occasional ping happening here. So we have alternative methods just because I guess of the industry that we're in. I'm not underestimating that I'm sure there is an awful lot that's happening out there and at some point we will have to tackle it, but very grateful to you guys.
To connect just briefly about the hybrid, we are also a hybrid culture, but again, when we say hybrid, we need to find out where people are for those people who's not in the office. So to give you an example, at first, being a very US specific, at first we said, okay, states, we can take care of the tax issues, not a problem. Immigration, we'll deal with it. Recently what happened was our leadership started asking, okay, I'll be in France, our headquarters for 3 days, but can I go to Germany? Can I be in the UK for those 2 days? We immediately red flag and say, okay, we need to analyze that. So you can imagine the question from the leadership is, mobility, start analyzing what data do we have?
So Shelley, we had talked earlier, you'd mentioned that you want to better leverage data when it comes to the family experience, and we had such a great discussion on that right now. And this is, through the relocation process, entire life cycle of that person's journey in a new country. Tell us more about this, throw some light on some examples that we discussed in the call. That was fantastic.
Yeah, so again, it's one of the observations, I think, the benefit of coming into the industry, not having built up through it is almost an element of fresh pair of eyes. So when I first kind of joined the team, suppliers and everybody was saying to me that the number one reason why assignments fail is because the family's not happy or the partner can't settle. And when I've been out visiting different sites and going for dinner with some of the families and some of the kids, it's talking to them, understanding, and I can absolutely see that, I haven't been an expat myself, but I have relocated from Bristol up to near Preston, which at times has felt like an expatriation, I tell you. But how isolating that made me feel, because although my partner and his family were there already, I didn't have any of my connections. So in talking to the families and in talking to the kids, understanding that we do employee surveys, we gather the data, we analyze the data, we speak to the employees, who is speaking to the families? What is that direct communication? Where are the phone calls? Where are the human touch points? What are the buddying systems? What's the advice that we can provide? How can we support dual career families? How can we support foundations like the Permits Foundation trying to achieve dual careers in an environment that is very different to how our current policy reads? My personal opinion, and we're looking at a reset of the policy, but my opinion is it's sort of set in almost 1950s style, where you have a spouse that follows you, trailing spouse, don't get me started on the word trailing spouse, but you have a family that follows you, and you are effectively cashed out an allowance for that. That absolutely, in my view, needs to be reset. And bringing it back to the data piece, what we were talking about was, I can absolutely see a huge benefit in the tech integrations. We've got to create this tech ecosystem, so we take out all these manual input points as we're going through the process. The data should just flow between. It should trigger automatic things. We should have online tax briefings that employees can go back and re-watch in a modular system, like when you're doing your exams at school, you can't take it all in one go, watch it with the families at home. All of that time saving, for me, isn't about cost, and I'm very fortunate to be in an organization where cost is absolutely, not the be-all and end-all. It's about value. And for me, the saving in time that you can have from the technology frees you up to do the value-add activities. So it's not about reducing down my team, it's allowing my team to be able to set up focus groups, working groups, spend the time, travel, go meet the families beforehand, whatever that looks like. That's the benefit of the technology and the automation that's coming towards us, rather than necessarily just being a cost saving.
No, absolutely. Joe, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of interesting concept you're mentioning about, because that's duty of care. Not only that, family care, which nobody talks about it, but we should care about it as a mobility. And in fact, that is one of the headaches of my chief CPIO herself, is that I think one of the presentation this morning was collision between the business and HR topics, where business always says we need to send that person somewhere for the business perspective, ROI is this and that. So of course we have all the data. No, that's not the approach. Our HR chief is always asking at the end. She asked the profile, she asked the cost, everything. But in the end, what she asks is, are you sure the family agreed to this? Because if you are not sure, you might want to go back and ask. And I want in writing that they do. She always asks that question. So whenever I meet with her, I have a bi-weekly or a monthly meeting to go over all the assignees list and all. And even repatriation or extensions, she even asked the question, again, all the way at the end. She says, approved, 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 and stop right there. Okay, are the family coming back? So how many family members? Is there a new birth? She asks all the questions as if I'm an HR business partner. So I need to know in and out about them, because that's a real true duty of care that we have to apply. But again, data can be supportive of that to make sure my conversation can be fruitful. So that's what I prepare for my meeting too, all the time.
No, absolutely. And someone made a very interesting comment today. If we retain talent, it becomes an investment, else it is a cost. Yeah, that was very interesting. I wanted to move on and switch gears a bit and check and talk about reporting. So when it comes to using data, how do you go about reporting your sustainability goals?
Yeah, absolutely. So before we start off with the reporting, one of the criteria that the procurement team put in place starting last year is a sustainability report. So any suppliers here, if you are interested in coming to the Dassault Systèmes and work, you need to have that sustainability report. The rating itself, if I remember, about 25% of the total percentage. If you're not able to report correctly on the sustainability and your journey, you don't need to be 100% now, but you need to have the journey and the plan for. If you don't have that, Dassault Systèmes does not consider the company as our supplier, in fact. So that's one of the reports that we try to get from the procurement side. And from my end, of course, sustainability, when it comes down to, we briefly talked about household goods shipment, carbon, and all those type of things. One interesting comment that was made by, again, our chief was, okay, well, I'm okay with all that, but why are we spending all this money? And then all of a sudden, I see the items where it says housings, temporary housings, household goods shipment. Wait a minute. Is there any other company who can actually do that all, or combine the functionality of it, or send a person who can be business traveling, like Apartel, we talked about it briefly in the morning. Can we have that arrangement and do the analysis of how the cost is impacting the business? So that question is also raised. So sustainability is a very big topic for the company.
Yeah, very similar for us actually, and very similar from the procurement side of things. Absolutely top down, it is one of the pillars that we are working to in terms of sustainability credentials and what we're doing in terms of reducing carbon, etc. One of the things that I think we have the ability to look at, certainly from a policy lens, is looking at some of the elements as you describe. There's the furniture allowance being based on throwaway IKEA furniture. Is there something that certainly generationally, I think younger generations are more open to the rental furniture, to second-hand side of things. So there's definitely policy elements. But for me, one of the bigger topics that I think we should be looking at is investment in the communities that we're going into. What working groups or what considerations can we give for our employees to harness, I guess, their experience in the country, but also what partnerships can we create to really invest in the community. So some of those, particularly the Middle East region, they have agendas in terms of Saudization or Omanization, so fulfilling the jobs and kind of lessening them off the reliance on oil and gas. That inherently creates an element of kind of cultural investment into that country, but what more can we do in the other locations that we have? How can we set up other programs that probably are more about that community aspect than necessarily just some cost elements and some carbon efficiencies? But 100% it's high on our radar. It's something that we're looking into and we're kind of working on it, but I think like a number of people, I don't think it's yet translated into hard changes in a global mobility world. I think everyone's still kind of looking at each other going, who's going to make the first move? What's the direction here? So,
No, that's very true. So do you feel that your respective organizations are connecting the dots when it comes to data? Like we talk about all these big topics here and we talk about extracting data, useless data, too much data, but are we like connecting the dots? Are we actually using it for predictive modeling to understand how to do things better, let's say, in the future? And I think at one point we even talked about automation of certain processes and maybe still keeping that human-centric approach to things. So your thoughts on that?
So I'll go first. We're on the journey to connecting the dots. We're very much focused on trying to work with our suppliers to create that tech ecosystem. So some of those API feeds, some of the integrations, removing the manual piece. For me, one of the most important tasks that we are going to have this year is around data accuracy and data cleanse, and how do we ensure that we have a single source of truth for the data that we hold. At the moment, we have multiple systems, multiple platforms, and yes, we're looking to integrate that, but if you integrate, it needs to be accurate data that you can then rely upon, and I don't think we're there yet. So we're 100% on that journey. That's absolutely the vision, to be able to have genuine, accurate data at your fingertips that then can drive thoughtful and insightful business decisions in a proactive way. Are we there yet? No, but we're definitely on that journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was mentioned this morning as well, the data can be a lot abundant, but at the same time, we need to sort out which one is the right data. So for example, before I go into the detail, the baseline is to make sure that you have the objective, and then making sure you are measuring based on the key objectives. Because if you fail to identify that, any data that's throwing in front of you is useless. So because of that, the Dassault System went through the HR transformation about a year ago with the same belief that we call it an agile methodology, as in project teams and then the technology engineering the team members use. But then that is tied to how data can be utilized. So for example, very first topic that the Dassault System looked at the HR as a whole was, we are not looking at the employees from the perspective of their journeys on their talent. And for somehow, mobility is greatly impacted as well, because ROI was talked about it this morning. So we start looking all of that. But then the problem we faced with was we had too much data.
Yeah, sure.
So the leadership came out and said, okay, forget about all that. Okay, the number one topic, to enhance the experience of the employee's journey, what data is most valuable? And we look at the reasons why people are not staying with the Dassault Systems and they are looking for something else. That was a critical data. Without saying the percentage, 2/3 of the people who left the company uniformly said, internal mobility limitation is the key reason why I'm leaving the organization. That was mind-blowing. But
No,
second,
that is, yeah. I think there was even a statistic thrown up earlier in the morning about the cost of a failed assignment,
failed
right?
assignment, right?
Yeah.
So the second topic that the leadership looked at was, okay, so let's not confuse each other. When we say mobility, we are not specific on assignment, we are not specific on domestic, or even profile. So the leadership look at, is that a profile, is that an internal, or is it external recruitment, or is it domestic or international? We have to separate all that. So that it makes sense that a lot of people are looking for from the both profile and the mobility in and out perspective. So that's why we said, okay, so business will always challenge us and say cost is too much. But then the leadership's perspective from the HR was, it's not a cost reduction. Let's contain the cost as it is today, but can we provide a better service? So start working on that. Of course, that's why I attend a lot of meetings, talking to a lot of supplier side and make friends with, because I need to understand what's going on. Of course, it's beneficial to all of us at the same time. So those data, so when we are collected, we start looking into our policy matters too. So it's all interconnected together. It goes back to actually connecting the dots on that matters. But again, going back to our topic of too much data, yeah, be very careful. You gotta have the objective to set what you want. So.
I was just saying, I absolutely echo that moment of clarity in terms of the amount of time that my team spend on creating different packs of data for different purposes. And there's different sessions that we need to go to. We need to present another pack of data, so that means a different analysis. And because we don't have it all joined up, that means an awful lot of manual work. And there just became a moment several months ago where we just went, okay, enough with all of these packs, let's just stop. What message are we trying to get across? How can we repurpose this data so that it kind of does the job for a number of these different stakeholder meetings instead of just creating data for data's sake? And then if you can't trust the data that you're analyzing, what's the point of analyzing it in the first place? Stop, do the data cleanse, get the basics right. Then we look at what we can do with it. But yeah, there is a huge amount of data, and not all of it is particularly helpful.
No, that was great. Thank you so much. We'd like to open up to the audience for any questions. Oh, sure.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Janet Nomadic. Actually, it's not a question necessarily. It's just a comment that one of the ways in which we've approached business travel is not necessarily, traveler A needs to go to a destination, we get them a visa, fine, anybody can do that, right? But what we want to look at is fast deployment, especially some of our clients in the energy sector. Time is money, right? So they're saying, how do I know who already has a visa for Papua New Guinea? Who has the requisite skill set to be able to travel and to do that job without having to go through that lengthy visa process again? Who are my nationals in that role who don't require a visa to travel to that destination? So with that rich data, we can sort of turn it on its head, and we can be really a lot more effective in the way in which we choose who goes where.
No, I mean, I have very similar story to tell you. So through the HR transformation, of course, I don't know the whole functionality of the platform within the company. And I found out that we have a very similar tool to identify that. So it's called My Journey. Is it running well? No, it's not. Because if I don't know it's in HR, then I can only guess that a lot of people don't know. But what that tool is supposed to do, and we are actually trying to launch it to the entire audiences of the employees, is that actually has a talent profiling mechanism inside. So when you are hired, your resume is stored, it's AI. They can analyze it and then put that in the book of, okay, this is our skill sets you have. What's your nationality? Do you require a visa to be deployed today or tomorrow? So the company, or again, we have plenty of data, but we don't know what to do with it. But now we do in terms of how we're going to create this tool called My Journey to make sure that when there's a talent pool available, we know if they can go, when they can go, or do they have a family concerns like HR questions that is coming along. So it's making our life much easier as a mobility. Because in the end, when everything is sorted out and identified, it comes to us to take care of the rest of the stuff anyways from the operation side. So that is actually in place. And I actually agree with you on that part. Yeah, it is needed.
Sorry, it's Andrew from AltoVita. The question I've got is, what's the 1 or 2 pieces of data that you think about on a daily, weekly basis that are, I guess, key to your roles?
I'll go first. The one that keeps me awake at night is the business traveller and the knowledge of where people are. And I'll be honest, that EC population, trying to get a handle on exactly where they're going so they're not the ones stopped at the borders. Obviously, everybody's as important as the next. But when it's an EC member that is travelling to different locations, how do we ensure that those individuals are absolutely, we've wrapped the compliance around them? That's probably the one piece of data that I would like to have at my fingertips.
Yeah, I'm connecting the dots together on that. From the compliance side, again, I'm an HR. My rank is up to the level I can only know what I know. But I was introduced to some other tracking and reporting and the technology to support of where people are and how people are accommodated. Their security is checking is that I was invited to go to the security office. That is a restricted area. It was last year. And I was actually able to see entire offices connection. And not only that, I was able to see how people are booking their trip. And thereafter, what is the risk area? Are their visas valid? All those type of things there. So again, it's only the time that will tell, like GPT does, that would the data be available for us? Is there technology available? I don't think that's the question. The question is, how are you going to use that? Because I think everything is available, but now we need to find out how we use that.
Great. Any other questions?
Hello, thank you, panel. So I'm curious to know how you, if you've come across challenges of using data to bring the human element into it, because data is great, technology is great, but have you come across where you need to not just present the data, but bring a human element to the data itself? Thank you.
I think that's when it becomes really powerful. So I think using the data in isolation is telling an element of the story, and you can use that to back up your gut feeling. But actually where it becomes super powerful is to use it with examples. So I'll give you an example on that. So when I went out to the US to meet a number of the assignees and the families, we had one particular case where the wife hadn't settled, she didn't drive, and in the US, if you don't drive, you can't get anywhere by the looks of things. So she would become incredibly isolated. And we had been saying from our team's perspective, actually, we felt we needed to do more with cultural training and spousal support, and we felt that that was required. And we did have elements of data on it. But when we were able to use the story of the dinner that we'd been to where the wife was in tears and this was her experience, then it became listened to. Then it became powerful. It was about bringing that data to life with the kind of that human side of things and the human touch. That's where I think it really does make a difference.
Thank you.
I think we have time for just about that much today. So thank you so much. Thank you, Joe, also for flying in here. We appreciate that. Thank you, Shelley. Love the insights. And thank you for being a great audience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.